Welcome, Carla Sonntag, to the New Mexico Suncast. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm just really pleased to talk to you today. I want to tell everybody watching today about you. Carla Sonntag is the president and CEO of the New Mexico Business Coalition and Better Together New Mexico. The New Mexico Business Coalition is a nonpartisan voice for business owners, employees, and individuals in New Mexico, created and staffed by native New Mexicans. I thought that was an interesting part of the bio. They believe our state can do much better than current national ratings reflect. We're kind of at the bottom, Carla.
Yeah, we are.
Advocates for all businesses and individuals is really your focus of the New Mexico Business Coalition. So welcome. I'm glad to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
As we're talking, I want people to keep in mind they can go to your website, which is nmbizcoalition.org.
Right.
And for some reason, I don't have the Better Together web address. What's that?
It's bettertogethernewmexico.org. All spelled out.
All spelled out.
Yeah.
So that's a long one. And I'm going to have you during our time together to talk to us a little bit about what each of those organizations do. But let's start with Carla Sonntag. Why are you in New Mexico? And tell us about your organizations.
Well, I was born and raised here, and I love this state, and I love the people. I mean, I think we've got some of the most beautiful parts of the United States are right here. Best food, best people. That's why I stay. I don't stay because the policy is good.
Yeah.
And that is why I started the New Mexico Business Coalition. It was through a lot of prayer and actually, at the time, considering moving to a different state because I was so frustrated with what was going on here. And that was over 16 years ago. But a lot of prayer and a lot of looking around, and I realized there is no perfect place. So why not stay and make this better?
Well, we appreciate that you've stayed. What's the mission really, though? I know business was initially the big focus, but then there's a lot of individuals. If you can't go to the store and buy something, or if you're going to get mugged on the way to the store, these are all issues that you've started to talk about. And a little bit later in our time together today, we're going to talk about what you're doing at the New Mexico legislature. So how you're serving is all encompassing. What about your organizations? They are tools for people to use, aren't they?
Absolutely. And they can get on our website and sign up for our emails. The Business Coalition is focused on good business policy. And so that encompasses a few things like education, because our children are our future workforce. And right now they're not being educated properly. And so it's bad for them, it's bad for business, it's bad for the state. And that's why that's of concern. We look at crime because people are wanting to leave the state because crime is so high. So all of these things tie into business policy. We're nonpartisan. We don't care about anybody's party affiliation politically. What we care about is, what are they doing about it? If they're an elected official, are they doing something to make it better for all of us? So that's the focus of the Business Coalition.
As you're talking about that, I'm thinking, yeah, that makes sense because there's not necessarily more business owners that are affiliated with any particular party.
Right.
We want to all live together. We all want to be safe. Thinking about that, Carla, a lot of people are feeling pain in our state. There's a large degree of poverty. Our stats for education are down low. And we're going to be talking about a poll that you initiated a little bit later as well, addressing all of these issues. And it's particularly relevant because the legislative session is about halfway done.
Yes. Today's the halfway point.
Oh, is today the halfway point? That's good to know. And you've put in a lot of hours, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But I want you to give some hope, if you would, to people that are watching and reading this interview. I need them to feel like this is not too overwhelming. I always think about when we feel pain, many times we say we're confused. But Carla, I know you well enough, and you've told me before, this is not complicated, is it?
No.
It's just going to take hard work.
Right. That's exactly right. And so under the Business Coalition, we started Better Together New Mexico, a project of the New Mexico Business Coalition. And the reason that we did that is because there were over 100 organizations throughout the state. We're up to 144 now that have joined together, locked arms, and said, we're going to do this together. And it's amazing what's happening. And that's the biggest thing I want people to know. By building this comprehensive coalition, and this coalition looks at everything that impacts your life, absolutely everything. But we're working together and we're making a huge difference. I just met with my leaders and they are so excited about what they're seeing in the trends. And I tell them it's because of you. It's because you didn't give up and you continue to put information out, help people to be informed, because I think when people are informed, then they get excited about, we can change that, or we can stop that, or we can do better with that. And so that's our whole purpose. And that's why all of us, even in the midst of all of these different crises going on, we're all a bunch of happy campers because we're seeing progress being made.
I'm going to keep this personal for a little bit longer. I want to know about Larry Sonntag, former Albuquerque police officer. He is your husband and works closely with you in all your endeavors. Talk to us about him.
Well, and he served in the military before that, in the Air Force, and we were in Germany for 4 years. And then he did 20 years with the Albuquerque Police Department and had a stunning career, actually changed things in that department that made a nationwide impact. And that was on the evidence unit. And it's just phenomenal what he did. But he said after all that time of me supporting him in the military and his police work, that it was my turn and he would support me. And I can tell you, Jim, I couldn't do this without him. He is our chief of staff, but he's really like my right arm and half of my brain because he keeps me going and gives me the support that I need. He's always behind me, and it's phenomenal to have that kind of support.
Well, I know last night you were at the state legislature and you were there for a specific reason. I'm kind of teasing this because I want people to stay tuned, but you were really there for the paid family medical leave bill, and that did pass in committee. Mm-hmm. And now we'll go to the House floor. So I'm going to give you a chance. Last thing we're going to talk about today, and that's in a while. But you know, those are the kinds of things that Larry has to be available for. I know people that are coaches and their wives or their husbands have to put up with them being at some game till 12 midnight. Well, your husband has to think about you and supporting you being up in Santa Fe for 2 months a year or 30 days, depending on the session. But it does take a lot, and we appreciate all the work that you're doing. And I appreciate that you're nonpartisan. Because part of the New Mexico Sun cast and the New Mexico Sun electronic newspaper, what we're trying to do is get both sides of the aisle to tell us who they are, what they're doing, and why they're doing it. And we hope that by communicating that might open up channels for people to talk together, not only make peace, but actually thrive together. You think that's possible?
I do. It is very, very polarized in Santa Fe right now, but I do believe that we're starting to see that break down and we're starting to see people work together a little bit more. And we love that. In fact, I was working on a bill today. I testified remotely, and it was bipartisan. And it passed out of that committee on a bipartisan vote. And that just makes my heart sing because we had both Republicans and Democrats sponsoring the legislation. It was to try to take care of something that the governor did by executive order that is very problematic for all of us. And they came together and they said, we need to not do this. We need to not force this on people, give them a choice. And the committee agreed as well. There were only 2 dissenting votes in a big committee, which is a really good sign for that bill to continue moving forward.
Carla, talk to us about how a business owner can be part of the New Mexico Business Coalition and how citizens can use your Better Together New Mexico website as kind of a tool to participate.
So we invite businesses to join us to become a business member, and we've got dues. We honestly have some business members that find our dues are too low, and they just want to give a different amount, and we don't stand in their way for that.
Well, you are a 501c4
Yes.
welfare organization, so contributions are tax deductible for people.
Not on a C4.
Gotcha.
For businesses, they can be, though, as a business deduction.
Oh, okay.
Because it's considered dues and subscriptions.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We do have a foundation. If somebody wants to give charitably, that's the 501c3 that's set up like churches in that it's a charitable organization.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I know that the government has regulations on people that are involved in lobbying and those kind of things, but I know you did some work trying to protect everybody when COVID first hit because there were so many layoffs and those kind of things. Give us a quick summary of that as our last, personal profile part of our interview today, because I want people to understand how you are actually taking action to benefit their businesses.
Yeah, we're not an organization that will sit back. We don't go along to get along. We're not trying to make friends with public officials. We're trying to help them make better decisions. So during COVID, we were locked down for an extensive amount of time and much more severe than many other states. And so we weren't making any headway. So I wrote a program for the governor to consider as an opening plan to get the state reopened after her severe lockdown.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
This is suggested, flow right into it. We're trying to help you, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. This was not criticism.
No, not at all, because we seem to all be stuck. And so when I drafted this up, we took it to the mayors. There were, we have 33 counties.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the mayors of those areas and we said, what do you think about this? We had 19 mayors sign on and say, this is a great plan, because we had an off-ramp if something went wrong where we could retract, regroup, and start again on opening. And they thought it was fantastic because they wanted to get their businesses open again, the schools open, the churches, and let people get back to life without endangering them. And that's what that plan was about. So we had Republican and Democrat mayors sign on to this, and then we sent it to the governor. It went nowhere with her, but we at least made an attempt. So we don't just sit back and twiddle our thumbs when we're stuck. We look for answers. We've got to understand the problem before we can address it, but we're not looking to criticize. We're not looking to create more problems. We're looking for good solutions.
I'm always amazed. Obviously, the new administration federally, the Trump administration, I guess is the best way to refer to them, is doing some things that a lot of people are upset about because it's unconventional.
Mm.
I have my older son as an auditor, and I know that Elon Musk has been a very successful businessman. I don't really know him, and I'm not going to comment about him, but it seems like one side of the aisle is criticizing everything Elon is allowed to do. And my son made a statement to me yesterday that I found was interesting. He said, Dad, it's not Elon that is auditing all these agencies. These are professional CPAs like me
Yes.
that they have put in place to actually find where money is being misspent.
Right.
So the reason I'd ask you that question earlier about when COVID hit and so forth is there was going to be some serious problem with unemployment insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And you came up with some answers, even though the governor didn't sign off on. And that actually resulted, and I don't think necessarily intentionally, but that resulted into some people being let go with New Mexico Workforce Solutions. So a lot of what you did was actually implemented, wasn't it?
Right. That was the second thing that we did during COVID, because I knew I had sat on the committee that worked on that unemployment insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew it inside and out. And I knew what was going to happen when they put everybody out to work and they were depleting that fund. I knew what the formula was going to do. And it was going to drive rates up so high that it was going to continue to drive people out of business. And I said, we can't have this. And so I went to the governor, and she didn't want to talk about it at first. So I went to the legislature and I said, look, you've got the money. You can put the money into this fund to bring it up to whole again instead of taking it out of businesses who were shut down not by their own choice. So put that fund back to whole and let them continue to pay the rates they've been paying, and we can salvage that relationship. And the legislature agreed with me wholeheartedly. It passed bipartisan. We got the money into the fund, and the governor line item vetoed it because she wanted to do it on her own, so she did it on her own. I don't care who takes credit. All I care about is we salvaged that fund for our businesses and didn't drive more of them out of business.
So people that are part of the New Mexico Business Coalition can really benefit by your efforts. And plus, you also provide additional resources. Like if they want to start a business, they can call your organization and find out. Why don't you give us the phone number and your websites one more time?
Yes, the Business Coalition is 505-836-4223. And the website is nmbizcoalition.org.
We're going to spend the rest of our time together. And I hope Larry doesn't feel offended that I didn't ask you more about his prowess in sports and other kinds of things, but he'll get over it. We're going to spend the rest of our time together really talking about the legislative session, because some people are just overwhelmed. The news, you can't, in my opinion, you can't really understand what's going on. Carla, as I ask you these questions, I want you to kind of explain the process that the legislature goes through. But we're going to start with a research poll that you commissioned using CWS Research and Hudson Talley. In fact, he's scheduled an interview with us next week, so we can talk with him more specifically about how do they do these polls, like how many people do they interview, how are the questions structured, all of that. But there are results that you want to talk about. We don't have time to talk about every result, because this poll was really talking about a lot of different topics. Even topics like, do you trust your legislators? Do you trust them to make the decisions that we depend on as a state? The results are really interesting because they kind of contradict what the voters are actually doing at the voting booth every year. I think I read something, you might have even told me this, that for 92 years, there's been one party that has controlled both the state legislature and the state Senate. And so, again, I'm not trying to bring criticism. I'm just trying to talk about, maybe as an auditor, if you're a citizen of the state of New Mexico, we're in the condition we're in largely because of the decisions that these people have made. Do you disagree with that?
Oh, no, you're 100% correct.
And you're now trying to bring it back, maybe more to center, by making policy, not decisions, but suggestions, and working closely with both sides of the aisle.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the legislature right now.
Yeah.
What are you, maybe we won't save it for last. Maybe we should talk about it now. I know paid family medical leave has been really a big one for you. It's 12 weeks. I understand the numbers are $3,000 a month or something that you're going to pay somebody. So you're going to pay them $9,000 for paid medical leave. Talk to us about who that affects as businesses and what your feelings are about that legislation.
Well, this is a brand new bill that they just put in yesterday to replace the House Bill 11, paid family medical leave. And now it's called something about, child family benefits. I don't know. It has this very long name because they have received over 270,000 emails in opposition to this legislation. through our organization, we've been sending out, we have these automated tools that people can use.
Yeah, explain that, how it works.
So when there's an issue that's of deep concern to all New Mexicans, we put together a call to action. And it's an electronic device where we can send a link out. You click on the link, it opens up this page. You can read about the bill, fill in your information. There's a letter that's already written. You can delete it and start over. And we encourage people to write their own and change the subject line. The important thing is, it takes less than a minute to do this, and it is programmed to go directly to the decision makers. So this call to action has been targeted at both committees. Between the two, 270,000 emails have come in opposition to that measure because it's that bad. So it got stalled 2.5 weeks. They rewrote it. In the rewrite, they lowered the fees that they were proposing originally. But what that means, you think that's good, because this is a new tax. And it is a tax on employees and employers. So every employee, unless they're in a program that is opted out, and there's strict rules about that, they have to pay. Every employer that has more than 4 employees has to pay for every dollar they pay in payroll this tax. So everybody's getting taxed. They lowered the fee, which you would think might be more palatable, but in fact, it puts the program even in more danger.
Hasn't the Finance Committee already reviewed this bill
They've not
and
seen
said
it.
that it would be bankrupt in a matter of years?
No, they will not send it to the Finance Committee, but there is an agency that reviews bills, and they create a document called the Fiscal Impact Report. And in that report, they said on the original tax that in about 3 years, it could be in trouble. And so there was a clause, and there still is, that allows the state then to raise the rate. So if you're already going to be in trouble in 3 years and you lower contributions, you're going to be in trouble a lot faster. Now, I don't support this. I don't support a new mandatory tax on anyone, and especially in the 3rd year of a budget surplus. Our state is rolling in the money, and instead of investing where they ought to invest, they're putting money into social programs that we don't agree with, and then increasing taxes against the rest of us. So we think this is bad policy, and that's what we're talking about, because eventually we're not going to have these budget surpluses, but we are going to have that expanded government bill that we're going to have to continue to pay. And so we're in a quandary, and rather than being in a train speeding to a brick wall, we're saying, you need to look down the road at what's going to happen here, folks. And that's the discussion that we bring.
So again, people watching, people listening today to our interview, they can participate by, and I had to consider this. When I sent you my email, I said, Carla, am I going to get inundated with emails from all kinds of people that you sell my data to?
Oh.
And you promised me, no, we're not selling your data. So it was really easy for me to go to nmbizcoalition.org, and I registered myself. And so I receive your calls to action.
Right.
Now, I haven't seen a call to action today, but I'm assuming there's going to be a new call to object to this latest iteration of the New Mexico paid family leave bill.
Yes. And the other thing you can do is go to our website and just go directly to the Take Action tab.
Okay.
You don't even have to sign up for our emails, and you can see there's 16 calls to action right now. Those are the best of the best or the worst of the worst bills that we're
And when
pushing.
you click on one of them, you get a screen. It has a little suggested letter, and you already said you can change that. And then based on their zip code, I think, or their address, it will go to the representative, either the state senator or the legislator that needs to have that information, correct? And that's automated?
That's when we go to the House. We will
Okay.
have them talk directly to their state rep, and state senator. In committee, it's programmed to go to every committee member.
There you go.
So
Okay.
it's not necessarily yours. You may not have anybody on that committee that you even
So
know.
you may have calls to action now while it's in committee. Well, it's actually been just passed to the House.
To the floor of the
Oh,
House.
to the floor of the House. So the next thing now will go to your representative if you
Right.
go now.
We'll reprogram it to do that. So we're always behind the scenes, keeping it programmed to
that.
where it needs to go. That's the beauty of this for the public because they don't have to look up emails and copy and paste letters. They can just format one letter, use what we've done or change it. We encourage them to change it. And then once they push the submit, it goes to the decision makers that need to hear from them.
You've also told us a little bit about, I want people to understand the inner workings of the legislature. You can go to the legislator's website, nmlegis.gov,
Yes,
and you can look for legislation. And in this case, you can look it up by number, and that would be HB 11.
correct.
And you can click on the bill, and you can look at the revisions that were just done yesterday.
Yes.
And it'll give you all the lowdown on what's happening. And then if you want to go to nmbizcoalition.org, it's really simple to respond to your particular representative or even to the committee, as you've said.
Well, and we make it even easier than that. If you go to our Take Action page and you're looking at a call to action, we've linked the bill there for you.
I love it.
So you could just click right there, read the bill, get more information, read what we think about it, and then write your letter, and it's programmed to go.
What I like most about this is you are suggesting some language, but you're allowing people to change it so it can really be communication from them. So you're just enabling people to communicate effectively and timely with their representatives.
Yeah,
And obviously that has some effect.
it's huge. That's the reason why that bill got stalled going from the first committee to the second, as they did a complete rewrite. And you mentioned the $3,000. Yes, for a child that is born or adopted, one of the parents will receive $3,000 a month for 3 months. And these are taxpayer dollars. And there's such a small percentage of people who will be able to take advantage of that.
Do you have to prove you're sick? Is this for
If you're taking-
pregnancies? How do you?
It's everything. I mean, if you're sick, a family member's sick, they even have a clause in this that if you have a neighbor or a friend who you're really close to, you can take leave up to 6 or 12 weeks to be with them.
Yow.
Yeah, this is the reason why we're just like, this is way too much. And it's not right in this time of high inflation to be taking more money out of an employee's paycheck and forcing business owners to pay more money into a taxed fund. When, as a business owner, I will tell you, I have an employee that needs to take time off. We work with that person and we make sure that they can take the time off they need.
It's not exceptional, is it, that even with this bill, the HB 11, the paid family medical leave, that the details are very vague. That's not unusual, is it?
No.
And what scares a lot of people about it is that there's a lot of money that's going to be collected, and a lot of people are going to get their hands on that money by not working. And there's really not some stringent criteria as
Right.
to how they qualify for that.
And what makes it even worse, they will start collecting money a year before they will allow anybody to take benefits. And then within a very short period of time, it's going to be financially in trouble. So rates are going to go up and there won't be money to pay for the benefits. They're not looking at all of that. But the other thing is, they are going to allow the Workforce Solutions Secretary to appoint a committee to determine how this is all going to be administered. She's going to have 4 business owners and 4 employees. Well, guess who's going to be chosen? It's going to be people that think this is a great idea.
Right.
And there won't be any dissension about taking a hard look at what's actually happening. They're going to get people that'll make it an easy pass and do whatever they want, and that doesn't help us.
Well, let's get back to the poll that you commissioned from CWS Research. Hudson Talley is going to be on the show with us next week. We're going to talk with him a little bit more detail about how they put polls together, how many people they talk about, and so forth. But this poll includes opinions on legislative job approval, public safety, energy regulation, and I'm going to read a couple of them. Would you say New Mexico is headed in the right direction? Well, the poll suggests that we are not.
Yep.
And this is not, this is a nonpartisan poll.
Oh, yeah.
This is as accurately as possible trying to get New Mexicans to say where they think we're headed. So talk to us about the parts of the poll that were really relevant to what you do.
Well, just about everything in there is very important. And I'll say I have used CWS before, and they do a very good job. And when you look at the demographics, they match exactly where our state is. So, for example, they polled more Democrats than Republicans because we have more Democrats than Republicans in the state. But they also had a great breakdown of all age ranges of voters from 18 on up, all the way up. And then demographically with the ethnic breakdown of the state, which followed very closely to what the state is, which means if you're getting a good cross-section that matches the demographics of the state, then you're hitting who you need. So they've got a really good way, and they'll talk to you more about that. But what we were looking for is where do people fall on a lot of these issues? And it was interesting to me on energy, for example, because there's a big fight going on right now in the legislature. There is a group of legislators that want nothing more than to shut down our oil and gas industry. Well, that can be problematic because we are the second largest oil producer in the United States. But what that means to us, that's 45 to 50% of our state budget. If that money goes away, if they get their way and they shut down all oil and gas production, how do we replace that revenue? The budget for the state has almost doubled in the last 6.5 years under the current administration. We're going to be in a world of hurt without that revenue. So what are they going to do? They're going to come and tax us to the point where we're going to flee the state. So that's why we support the oil and gas industry. But here's what was interesting. In the breakdown, 59% of Hispanics, 69% of Latinos, 76% of Native Americans, and 86% of Asians strongly believe that we should be producing more oil and gas in the state. Yeah.
Well, and it's not like the oil and gas producers are not regulated. I mean, I know even car emissions are so far reduced, it's unbelievable. And there's actually a pretty strong argument with all this discussion about electric vehicles, EV, that the carbon footprint of producing those cars, including the batteries and stuff, is larger than a gasoline engine. So, I mean, I guess what my point is, I don't want to argue without the direct knowledge. What I want citizens like me to do is to be able to go to the New Mexico Business Coalition and find out what are the questions we should even be asking. Mm-hmm. And then I'd like to see a bipartisan effort or a nonpartisan effort to actually ask the questions and get the data in so that we know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that disappoints me singularly about New Mexico as a whole. We seem not to go to other states and say, gee, how are you treating homeless? Seems like you're doing a really good job. Could we emulate what you're doing? Would you help us? I don't ever hear those stories.
Right.
And I think this is one. Like, for example, if we're imitating California, that's a train wreck.
Yeah. But that is where we spend a lot of our energy. There was, focusing on California policies. They don't work there. They're not going to work here. I just got an email from someone today just outraged about a bill that he just had come across that we've been working on for a month. But he said, what are these people thinking? They're going to shut down, they want to shut down oil and gas, and then what? But that's just one bill. There's probably 30 bills related to more regulation, more taxation, or just completely eliminating altogether that industry. Dangerous precedents to be taken in this state.
Absolutely. Something not energy related, and I don't have it on our list of topics, but I just found it very interesting. You obviously, crime is affecting business in a negative way throughout our state, not just in Albuquerque or Las Cruces or Rio Rancho, but in every community. So the fifth question on the CWS poll was repeat offenders who are charged with violent crimes should be held without bail until trial. Because everybody's heard about this catch and release.
Yeah.
And how many times do we hear about a violent crime being committed, and these are people that were just recently released for similar crimes, and they're out on the street? Well, that's not the fault of the police.
Right.
I don't know whose fault that is. Maybe the judges need a little accountability. But here's what the poll said. 94% of people believe that repeat offenders should be held without bail until trial. 94%. So if you're a legislator, don't you take, not necessarily depending on this poll, but I can't imagine your constituents think anything different.
Right.
So why wouldn't you pass legislation to do exactly that?
You know, and this really eliminates a very good point that we've been talking about today. On that issue, this was a constitutional amendment that went before the voters in the last administration to try to resolve what they considered was an issue with bail, that we had too many people with minor offenses being held in jail because they didn't have money for bail. So it was called bail reform. And their whole purpose was, they said, we've got to get these minor offenders out of the jail until trial. We don't need to house them there. They're not a flight risk, and they're not going to harm anybody. So the voters said, oh, that makes sense. And so they said, yes, and we have this constitutional amendment. But then we talked about promulgating rules. They had rules that were put together, and that's what created this revolving door for criminals. So the judges will often tell you, hey, I'm subject to these rules that I have to follow, and that's the reason I let them out. Now, I think some judges should be held accountable, but a lot of them have their hands tied. And this was because of how this was put together. Well, the people in the state are tired of it. They're tired of living in fear. They're tired of people being killed by these repeat offenders who should be kept in jail or prison. They said our jails were overcrowded. Do you know that now they're not overcrowded? In fact, they're at about 40% capacity, and they're talking about shutting down some of our prisons because they can't afford to keep them open. There's got to be some balance between overcrowded and out of business.
You're a business person. You coach business people. You support business people. And I know the state can't run like a business. Like, you can't make a decision in this legislative session, determine in 90 days it's not a good idea, and change it. But you can change it once a year during the legislative session.
Right.
So I think it was 2021. Qualified immunity was removed as a protection for our law enforcement officers.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought it was a strange thing because there really is no benefit to suing a police officer. The money is with the city. The money is with the state. So if you want to be compensated, and there's no way to make up for the loss of a person, right? Mm-hmm. And if a police officer was wrong, you should be reimbursed something to take care of your family and to protect their family. So with qualified immunity being removed, we've now had, and it's attributed to the fact that we can't recruit police officers, particularly in Albuquerque. We're 400 or 500 officers short of the number of people that we should have on the street. Again, we mentioned your husband is a former police officer. Of course, he was protected by qualified immunity when he was an officer, and they had more officers when Larry was serving than they do today. And so that's one of the reasons I understand that we have so much crime. Just one of the contributing factors. Why wouldn't the legislature consider removing that and reinstating qualified immunity? Is that unreasonable?
It's not, but to clarify first, qualified immunity did not allow police officers to just have a free-for-all and do whatever they wanted. They were only protected if they acted within the realm of the law and their training. So if they acted outside of that, if there was excessive force or they just had bad judgment, they were not protected with qualified immunity. There was a fair system that they would be evaluated and punished or fired or, and everything in between. So when you take away qualified immunity, even if they are acting within the realm of their training and the law, they are subject to their own defense now. So a lot of police officers, it doesn't matter if they don't have a lot of assets to give. Do they have the assets to protect themselves in a court of law? The reason that the legislature passed that is because there are a lot of attorneys up there who want this Pandora's box opened up for more lawsuits, because that's what they do for a
And you're
living.
referring specifically to legislators that are involved in the legal process.
Yes, we have a lot of attorneys up there, some of which that are very tied into this directly, and some that are tied in because they're attorneys with the whole realm. And so that is a personal interest that got in the way of better judgment, in my opinion. And the people now that understand what has happened, they want that fixed as well. But you've got legislators not listening.
Carla, where can our viewers and our listeners get more information about the poll results? How are you releasing that information?
We've done several press releases on the data, and we have given some of the data to legislators who are taking up legislation directly impacted by the poll or about the poll. And so we're giving that to them. But this entire poll and all the results will be posted at nmbizcoalition.org very soon. Probably this week we'll have it posted.
And I think we'll also probably have those results on the New Mexico Sun.
Yes.
And so that's another place you can go, newmexicosun.com. But New Mexico Sun is a great place for information. But if you need a tool to actually engage in the process, you'll want to go to NMBiz, B-I-Z, coalition.org, and then you can go to calls to action, and you can see, did you say 16 or 17 right now on the webpage? It doesn't take a long time to read those either, does it?
No, but we link you directly to the page that has the bill, the analysis, all of that that's on the NM Legis website. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. You can get everything you need right at our Take Action page.
Well, I'm so thankful that you came to talk to us today, Carla, because I think this is a tool that most of us don't know about and we can use, and it's effective. It doesn't take a lot of time. You have to do a little reading, but it's not laborious. You're not
Right.
reading a 500-page book. I always admire people that can do that kind of reading. But this is actually really interesting because you can click on bills that are interesting to you and the calls to action, and you can actually communicate directly with your representatives through the New Mexico Business Coalition.
Right. There's also a folder there that you can look at all the bills that we're monitoring. You can also read every letter that I have sent to the legislature. And those are also available under bettertogethernewmexico.org. Same thing, the Take Action tab, and you can find all of these resources because we obviously don't have a call to action on every piece of legislation we're working on.
Well, let's say somebody wants you to do a call to action on something. Can they contact you and ask you to participate?
If it makes sense to do one, we would be happy to do it, yes.
Yeah, so you're really inviting communication. You want both individuals and businesses to get in touch with you and utilize your resources. And Can people help you in any way? I guess other than you do take donations and those kind of things. Talk to us a little bit about how they can do that in closing.
Well, they can donate through either site or join as a member of the Business Coalition. Certainly, we need the financial resources in order to keep doing this work. I tell people that we run a tight ship. We squeeze those pennies until Abe's screaming, but we don't live in excess, but we do need resources. But we also need participation. We need to hear from people, because I'm doing this and my whole team is doing this to help the people of New Mexico. It's not about us. It never has been about us. So we completely set ourselves and our ego aside to look at what's better for the state.
Well, we've got another 30 days of the session. You told us at the beginning that we're halfway through today.
Yes.
And so we'll count on maybe getting you back here at the end of the session to kind of recap everything that's happened.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Carla, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.